it's very important that we all understand that simply finding a study on something is not the same as gaining an experimental knowledge, because there are many studies out there that have been published which give very contrary conclusions. What one really needs to do is to get a broad perspective of all the research that has been done on something and not just find a study that proves something.
And go with the weight of the evidence, huh?
Exactly. So, like, for example, you could probably find out there a study claiming that grapefruit seed extract is awesome and that it has all these properties. And so you might find that study and say, oh, see, this is my experimental data. But maybe that study was testing grapefruit seed extract with the contaminant in it, and maybe it does have those antibacterial properties, but maybe that's not all what it's, supposed to be. Maybe it's actually a bad thing in that context. So you have to look up all the research that has been done on it. So what you want to find are systematic reviews where scientists have collected all the information and have analyzed the value of the study. And not all studies are created equal. A study that included only a couple people and only lasted for a few days is not as weighty as a study which included 100,000 people and lasted for decades. And you want to learn something about the methods of the study. I'll mention an example of an experiment that I believe is poorly thought out. So often, like, there's an experiment that's done in order to test self-awareness. And the experiment is that you put a sticker or draw a little dot with a marker on the face of an animal, whether human or another animal, and then you set them in front of a mirror. And if they look at the mirror and then use their hand to touch their own face where the dot is, that is supposed to prove that they are self-aware. And yes, I think that it does. It shows that they are aware of themselves. But it's not like the test for self-awareness, because what that seems to be a better test for is whether something has figured out how a mirror works. But being aware of oneself and understanding how a mirror works are not the same thing. So you could have something that's aware of itself and yet not understand how a mirror works and not recognize the image in the mirror as being a reflection of themselves. So basically what I'm saying with that is that seeing a reflection of yourself and touching your own face is one way to show self-awareness, but not having that experience does not show that something is not self-aware. And also you kind of have to define what self-awareness is, because ultimately, if something feels an itch and scratches their own itch, it shows that they are self-aware to a certain degree or in a certain way. But I don't think that's what people are trying to test when they're trying to figure out self-awareness. But seeing a dot in a mirror and touching your own face, to me, is only showing really that same type of self-awareness as feeling an itch, in addition to the fact that they understand how mirrors work. So often people look at an experiment like that and use it to draw conclusions about the psychology of animals and so on that really cannot be drawn based on the experiment, because the experiment can really only go so far in what it shows. So you want to keep this in mind when you're doing research on a particular issue. You want to ask, what does the experiment actually show? What are the limits of the experiment? Are the methods actually devised in such a way to give the conclusions that the scientists are seeking? Like, is it actually a valid experiment to answer the question that is supposed to be answered? So This is all important to keep in mind.